Hi everyone, this is Jeffrey from the University of Sydney and nice meeting all of you. I'd like to thank the HERDSA committee for providing this opportunity to share my work with the education community through this video presentation. This is also my first ever participation in the HERDSA annual conference, and I'm sure there'll be much I can learn from this community. Certainly hope that the global COVID situation will stabilize and hope to be able to join this conference next year in person. For now, I guess I can only imagine the peaceful Brisbane from Sydney, and we'll be looking forward to visit Brisbane again in the near future. In fact, I studied for my bachelor's and master's in Brisbane before moving to Sydney to complete my PhD. Hence, there are plenty of memories for me in Brisbane. Anyway, let's get things underway, and today I'm going to share my work on the issue of student engagement. Right, let me start by highlighting some key aspects from the abstract. As we know, we face many challenges in education, and engaging learners in core subjects is one of those we have to deal with. To enhance learner engagement, a practice-led approach is used, which falls under the work-integrated learning space. This approach, as we know, brings many benefits, but is it losing its traction? As educators, what can we do to maintain and motivate learners to engage with their university studies? So essentially, this is an ongoing discussion that we'll have in the education space, and something that educators will have to constantly think about, especially under the current COVID situation. Right, before going into the details, allow me to share with you the key takeaways from this presentation. So, as we are all aware, learner engagement is an ongoing challenge faced by educators, which has implications on learner experience overall. And for this study, I'm looking into core units, which serve as an added challenge when addressing this particular issue. In terms of the approach used in these units, I've embedded real-life projects provided by industry partners to help overcome these challenges. And to determine and to find out whether this approach actually works and continues to do so, I tap into the end of semester unit surveys and draw upon some of the unsolicited feedback from learners. In terms of the overall findings from this evaluation, I found that there's by and large improved learner engagement, but this improvement seems to ease over time. And upon reflecting and learning from this experience in teaching core units, I've thought about using this particular framework, which I dubbed Trinity of Engagement Framework, as an alternative to help us understand and improve learner engagement. And in terms of moving forward, we know that to encourage and motivate students to learn and to continue on improving learner engagement, it is something that needs to be constantly managed and sourced. And in other words, we need to be committed and continue to do so, which actually takes quite a lot of time if we are thinking about how things unfold, especially over the last couple of years. In this presentation, I'll be breaking it down into the following areas. I'll set the scene by providing a context for this study and its significance. Next, I will highlight the methods used to gather the required data and report some of the key findings. Finally, learning from this experience of teaching in these core units, I would like to propose a framework as one of many ways to understand and improve learner engagement. As we are aware, core subjects can be a challenge to teach. Number one, we know that it is a compulsory unit within a degree program or a major. So in other words, learners will have to do it rather than they want to do it. And often core units are perceived as difficult, boring, and dry. And by and large, it will garner limited interest from learners. So this would have implications on learner engagement and their subsequent experience. So what I've observed when it comes to core units is learners, by and large, have limited or lack of engagement within their learning management system, even through their readings, with their teaching team, or even with their peers. And of course, we know that there are many factors involved in terms of how the unit influences or how students or learners engage with their units. And as we know, the current pandemic actually made this even worse. So in other words, by and large, through my observations, it seems that students are getting more and more disengaged, and I'm sure many of the educators out there right now will agree with this observation. So just to perhaps as a way to improve their engagement, I've used live projects sourced from industry partners, and to kind of as an added incentive, the top groups will be selected to present to the industry partners. So this would have implications on the, especially when it comes to the learner experience going down the end of this visual, is what they learn, how they learn, and if they learn. For this study, I've used data gathered from the standard university unit evaluation online surveys that has a mix of quantitative question items and qualitative open-ended questions for learners to provide their feedback. And I've tapped into surveys from 2 units. So both of these are core units, 2 of which are from the first year and 2 of which are from the second year. So in fact, there are essentially 2 units within a major of study and across 2 years. So the first year core unit will be the same unit in 2018 and 19, whereas the second year core unit will be the same unit for 2018 and 2019. And this study looks into their evaluations across 2 cohorts from each of those units. So here are some of the key findings coming out from the unit evaluation surveys. So based on the questions that asked about the work, whether the work has been intellectually rewarding. So as you can see, for the first year core unit, there was an improvement between 2018 to 2019. For the second year core unit, I think they are quite consistent in terms of their percentage of agreement. For the second question on whether they have developed relevant critical and analytical thinking skills, so as you can see, the improvement based on the first year core unit would be much more significant compared to the second year core unit. So by and large, there's an improvement across these 2 units. And for the third question on the assessment task, whether they find it challenging. So as you can see, there's an improvement across in terms of the agreement for this item. And finally, for the question on whether the learner was satisfied with the quality of the learning experience overall, we can see that there's an improvement across whether it is in the first year core unit or in the second year core unit. Now, perhaps I'd also like to share with you this particular finding that compares the first year core unit from the semester 2 2018 cohort with the second year core unit in the semester 1 2019 cohort, because these 2 cohorts are essentially the same. So what happens is in these core units, those who have completed the first year core unit will then move on to complete the second year core unit. So in other words, this will be perhaps a good indication of the effectiveness of using this practice-led approach. So across these 4 items, we can see that there's an improvement in terms of their percentage of agreement across these 4 question items. And here are some of the qualitative feedback provided from learners. So by and large, we know that there are benefits in terms of using this approach based on what they have provided through their quantitative ratings as well as from their qualitative feedback. So based on these initial observations, I found that learner engagement can and do vary by cohort despite using the same practice-led approach. So here, I'd like to propose a framework which can help us perhaps examine this challenge to improve learner engagement. And as we know, it is certainly not helped by the current pandemic. So this framework puts the spotlight on three interrelated parties that contribute to engagement and considers how these parties can coexist to create a better engagement and experience for learners. So by putting these parties in the spotlight, the educator, industry partners, and learners, it forces us to take an inside-out and outside-in view. In fact, a 360-degree view on the issue of engagement. So what I've learned here is that engagement is a process that needs to be managed over time, and it is something that we need to be constantly be reminded of, that we have to be committed, and we can certainly capitalize on those relationships that we have built with our industry partners through time as well. Industry partners, they will provide a great source of opportunities for our students, as well as providing relevance to the materials that we're covering in our units. And as for learners, I think it is important for us to nudge them and get them to break away from their perception about core units. So obviously, from this kind of experience, we know that this is something that needs to be constantly thought about. But of course, the big question here is it worth it? So before I end this presentation, let me highlight several limitations surrounding this study and some thoughts moving forward. So data used for this study involves standard unit variation surveys, which are aggregated. So in fact, I do not have access to the raw data, which would be valuable to enable me to conduct a further statistical analysis in the context of the effectiveness of learner engagement. And those are 4 question items that I've used in this presentation. They are, in fact, indirect questions that allows me to infer the implications on learner engagement. So some thoughts moving forward. So I guess it is important for us to have the right engagement mix with the industry partners in terms of who we partner with, what sort of projects are involved, and how will they be managed. And in order for us to work on this engagement situation, I think it is also important for us to understand that it is a hidden process that needs to be managed over time, and often this stretched beyond the intended semester. So another observation which perhaps that is a little bit concerning in this situation is that as much as practice-led approach does improve learner engagement, but based on my observations, this sort of interest appears to ease over time. So is this something that we have overused? Considering nowadays there are a lot of real units offered in many degree programs. So obviously there'll be more questions than the answers, but at least I hope this will give us some initial ideas and thoughts to kind of think about this important issue. So before signing off, here is my email contact, and I'll be happy to be in touch with you via email as an initial touch point, and possibly organize further conversations via Zoom in the near future. So thank you so much for listening and watching, and once again, thank you HERDSA for providing this alternative to share my work in this conference. Until then, please stay safe and take care. Goodbye.